Hello, welcome to week 2 in Lent and our Red Letter Challenge. Ted Moeller, Sarah Eustace Brown here, giving you an idea of how what we're going through so that when you go through it, it'll be even better. More challenging, but better. Today's week is focusing, last week was on being, and this week it's on forgiving, which drives up the intensity just a little bit.
Yeah, forgiveness is something we definitely talk a lot about, but suddenly when it's time to apply it, it's slightly more difficult than just the conversations we have in church about it. So I'm reminded of a quote by Andy Stanley, probably my favorite quote on forgiveness, which is, "In the shadow of my hurt, forgiveness feels like a decision to reward my enemy. But in the shadow of the cross, forgiveness is merely a gift from one undeserving soul to another." Yeah. So I like this idea. I know it sounds kind of cliche, and we work for the church, so you think, we're supposed to say this, but I really do believe that the cross changes everything. And we have these choices of, do we want to build our lives in the shadow of the hurt that people have done to us? But if we choose that, it's going to change all of our relationships, the way we view the world, the way we treat others. Or we can really choose to build our life in the shadow of the cross. And that will affect all of our relationships and everything we do and all of the choices we make. So, just depends on what do you want casting a shadow over your life.
Yeah, I really like that. You're highlighting shadows. That's kind of an awkward thing to put. But we tend to consider shadows as gloomy things, even ominous somehow and scary. But the fact is, you can't have shadows without light. Jesus says, "I am the light of the world." And he says that with the cross in mind. The cross casts a deep shadow over sin, death, and Satan. So for us, that shadow should constitute refreshing shade from the fires of hell, you might speak. That we are children of the light. And that's what enables us to perceive the shadows and find hope even there. In the battle between light and darkness, it's kind of great that light always wins. Even the tiniest flickering candle puts darkness at bay. A single flashlight might not illuminate an entire dark cavern, but it will show us the way. There's no such thing as a flash dark that takes all the light out of something, but even one little flicker changes everything. We are the light, and that means we win.
I like that idea too, when you said like a little light can show us the way. During the Red Letter Challenge, so my parents have had an interesting relationship growing up. A lot of past wrongdoings on the part of my dad, a lot of hurt. And throughout their time, once they were divorced, my mom made the decision that she was going to embrace this process of forgiveness. And that small light really showed the way for the rest of the family. So when we started this process, my dad actually ended up in the hospital with a major heart attack. They didn't know if he was going to make it, did surgery, came out of it. Then he had another problem. They're like, there's another clot, don't know if he's going to make it. Did another surgery. They nicked his liver, didn't know he was going to make it. Did another surgery. But the amazing thing was that little light of forgiveness that my mom had started many, many years ago meant that in this moment, the family was together. We were able to support him, pray with him. There wasn't this fractured unit, even though their marriage has been done for many, many years. And actually, when he came home to recover, he stayed at my mom's house with her current husband, which some people would be like, what? His boss, the fire chief, was like, wait a second, your wife's ex-husband is going to recover at your house. And John's like, yeah. So that tiny light of forgiveness, which started out very small, actually shown a path forward, and not just for my mom and dad, but really for our entire family, which taught their grandchildren something. And so when we choose to embrace that tiny spark, it's not just really even for ourselves, it shows the way for other people, and it spreads. It's that idea of it affects relationships that we might not even realize, the people who are watching us go through the process of forgiveness, and how it really can mend a lot of broken things. So when I think about that idea of build my life in the shadow of my mistakes or what's been done to me, which just feels like, man, I don't want to be that person. Or do I want to raise my sons, love my husband, take care of my youth group, be a neighbor in the shadow of the cross, which is all about embracing what has Christ done for me and let that just flood all of my relationships. I mean, it's an obvious choice if you look at the way Andy puts it, and I really like that quote. Confronts me when I'm like, well, I don't know. Do I want to let him off the hook? Yeah, you want to let him off the hook. So yeah, I always come back to that quote in those moments where you're in a bind of like, do I want to forgive? You want to forgive.
Yeah, forgiveness, like light, is all about victory too. You know, you might think it's giving up or giving in, as you said, but to those who might wrong us, but really, you know, it's what leads us beyond us, what makes us stronger. I'm reminded of a time where I was driving across the Glenn Jackson Bridge between Oregon and Washington. And I was in the left-hand lane about to pass this log truck. And I'm doing 61 miles an hour in a 55 mile an hour zone.
Over.
Yeah, well, it's comfortable. and as I'm driving there, this car pulls up so close. It was almost like I was standing still. He's so close to me that I can see his nose hairs through the rear view mirror. And it's like, I have every right to be in this lane. I am not slowing anybody down. I'm going faster than I'm legally allowed to. What is this guy's problem? And if I wanted to insist on my being right and him being wrong, I would be stressed out. Instead, I took a deep breath, pulled in behind this log truck, and let this guy zoom past me with a mean look, and then I could go back in the left-hand lane and watch him do it to the next car ahead of him.
You can be at peace.
Forgiveness is like that. Sometimes we want to hang on to I'm right, they're wrong, but the fact of the matter is that really it's letting yourself take the high road, even if you're just driving across the bridge.
Yeah. During our challenges, when you guys get into them, there was one in particular where the day was, you know, let go of any past hurts that you've been hanging on to. Is there someone you're struggling to forgive? And I'm like, I really can't think of anybody, you know? So I was like, I don't really know about this challenge. But then later on that week, there was a moment where suddenly God highlighted you think you've forgiven, but you haven't.
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah. I was like, oh, I don't got anybody. And he's like, au contraire. In 5th grade, our son Dylan had some pretty serious issues with bullying with a kid, we'll just call him Brady, at his school. And it led to some pretty substantial problems for Dylan and the family, and left some lasting issues for him, questioning trusting friendships and people who said they were your friend and really weren't. And so 2 years has passed, and I feel like, you know, they were in 5th grade when this happened. I've moved on. And then that week, the forgiveness week, students at the school were supposed to choose a Bible verse that really spoke to them, that they try to live out. And they were publicly posted, like parents could see all of them. It was like on an online forum. And there was Brady's verse. And first of all, why was I even looking for it? I mean, that right there is a dead tip-off. Like, why am I scrolling through, like, let's see what that kid said? Like, obviously right there, forgiveness has not been fully, you know, worked through. And his verse was, let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be pleasing to you, O God. And then he talked about, you know, I always try to be nice to people, and I always try to make sure the words I say are kind. And I thought, yeah, were your words kind in 5th grade to my kid? And I saw in that moment, like, no, you have not fully forgiven. So sometimes forgiveness, it's not a one-time thing. It's daily deciding I'm going to keep forgiving. I'm not going to go back to holding a grudge or hanging on to that or letting anger back in. So it's not always one and done. And sometimes you think you're past it, and God does some revealing of your heart, and you realize, you know, I'm not, and I gotta confess that. Write it in my book, you know. So it was an interesting moment where I had to laugh at myself. So
mine was the one on day 16. It's kind of funny. It says something pretty simple. It says, be intentional about showing mercy to someone today. And I said, I don't have to do that. I show mercy to everybody. And then I remembered Alonzo. Alonzo's this guy that comes by our church periodically to get money. And he says, the church has some money for me. I need this, because the sob story is always the same. Some medical issues, some no gas, or whatever it is. And he comes at the most inopportune time. And I tell him, we don't have any fund. That whatever you get is what's in my wallet. And you're not getting it from the church, you're getting it from me. and it's never going to be enough for you, so maybe you should go somewhere and get... Anyway, he still shows up. Well, he showed up Sunday a while back when I was really stressed out, and I had to get up to Bellingham to be with my brother-in-law who was going through some medical issues, and it was like, I didn't have time for this. There's all these people here. He doesn't come to church, comes after church, and wants to put the squeeze on me. The other problem was I had money in my wallet more than normal that I didn't want to open and show him. So I wasn't completely unculpable. But the thing was, it stuck me because I was very short and I was very mean to him. And if I'm going to show intentional mercy to someone, it means I have to do it probably starting with Alonzo. Now, I don't know when he's going to show up, so it wasn't happening on day 16, but I have, and if you're watching, Alonzo, I have a little something ready for you with kindness and everything, to be intentionally kind to someone that it's really difficult to.
Yeah.
So maybe you've had some problems with your with any sort of these things where I think it shows that you don't have to do them on that particular day, but it gets onto you, and you'll find, or at least I found in a couple of them, that God's revealed the day where it comes. And so bear that in mind as we do these challenges, rather than try to say, if I don't get it done this day, forget about it. But if you have issues, if you have things like that, please find some way to share them with us, and we can talk about those too.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned Andy Stanley as your favorite quote. That's not mine about forgiveness. Mine is from Jesus.
Oh.
Yeah, it trumps Andy Stanley, probably. I don't know.
I'd say more than a little bit.
In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus talks about the judging that happens before forgiveness. And he has this real thing that Jesus occasionally does where he exaggerates to make a point. And so what he says in this case is, how can you judge the log in somebody else's eye, when the speck in somebody else's eye, when you got a log in your own? Here's my friend, if you see on the TV, look at how happy he is. He got that log out of his own eye, and then he could do the specks in others. You know, I think our inspection starts off with defocusing on the specks and maybe the logs. One of the challenges is like nail a plank to your head, but I don't think that he's being serious here. But that idea is sometimes the judging, as the saying goes, whenever you point a finger at someone, you got 3 times as many pointing back at you.
Yeah.
So that's the segue, the segment for this week about forgiving. Forgiving is really important for the other person, but for us. And that starts with not judging. And that speck that we look at, maybe we need to inspect the logs in our own eyes.
Yeah.
Let's close with a prayer. Dear God, you spoke through Jesus, your Son, saying that we should pray to you that we forgive as we have been forgiven. This is a cause and effect call for us to see in our own engagements with other people the necessity to forgive them if we dare ask for your forgiveness. We know we receive it. And so our hearts should be overwhelmed and overflowing with joy and love. And the forgiveness should come easy, but sometimes it doesn't. We ask, O Lord, you equip us with forgiving senses, that we might find ways to not just forget, but as you say through Jeremiah, to remember no more, and instead celebrate the unity we have in you and our forgiveness. Be with us in this endeavor, O Lord, now and always. Amen.
Amen.